Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome to this session, Is Quality Killing Your AI? Defining Data Fit for Strategic Success. My name is Kate Gallo. I'm your moderator today. I'm with Blue Street Data, and we have Andy Hanna and Malcolm Hawker with us today. Throughout today's session, we'll have a 30-minute session running till 1:30 today, Eastern Time. We're going to talk through quality and fit in data strategy and AI, how they both work together, what they mean, and how you can improve data fit and data quality within your organization. I'm going to hand it off to Malcolm Hawker and then Andy Hanna to do short introductions, and then we'll get started.
Thanks, Kate. Welcome, everybody. My name is Malcolm Hawker. I'm the Chief Data Officer of Profisee. Profisee makes master data management software. I've been in that role for about 3.5 years. Time is whizzing by. Prior to that, I was an analyst at the firm of Gartner, making quadrants of magic and cycles of hype. Prior to that, I was a practitioner. When it comes to IT, I've held just about every role that you can imagine. I have implemented data governance programs, implemented MDM, data quality programs, been a consultant, been an analyst, been a senior leader of IT. Just about every hat you can wear in this field, I've worn at some time or another. I'm excited to be here today.
Uh, I'm Andy Hanna. I'm CEO of Blue Street Data. And first, let me say, Malcolm, this is a highlight of my week. So I was looking forward to this webinar. I know we're going to have a great conversation. Blue Street Data is a company that optimizes the relationship between buyers and sellers of data. And that has a lot to do with fit. So we'll talk about that today. I'm also on faculty at University of Pittsburgh, where I work with real clients in machine learning and AI outcomes. And I'm also chair of the university's advisory board for the Hub for AI Leadership. I've been kind of like Malcolm, I've been in data science, AI companies for the past 30 years. And it's just a fun time to be here in this part of the journey.
Thank you both. Both great people, both great experts in data. Really excited for this conversation. We've had Malcolm on for past webinars and sessions. So feel free to go back and watch any of those recordings with Malcolm in the past. So we're going to kick things off here. First question I have for both of you. Malcolm, I'm going to hand this off to you first, and then Andy.
Okay.
How do you explain the difference between quality and fit in data?
Oh, gosh. Well, one, quality is the level to which data adheres to a specific standard, right? And typically those standards are expressed through data governance policies, right? We expect this level of accuracy. We can break quality down into the traditional dimensions. There's as few as four and as many as 30 plus. It depends on who you talk to. How many dimensions of data quality are there? But that aside, I don't want to fall down that rabbit hole of how, what the dimensions are. Quality versus fit to me is quality is the degree to which you adhere to a specific standard. Typically, that standard is defined through the requirements of what we need for analytics, right? That's one. There's another way to look at it. What do we need for the reports to run? What do we need to make sure that the data pipeline doesn't break? What do we need to make sure that when my CFO looks at something, that she or he can make sense of it and that it's accurate and it's consistent over time. That to me is the kind of the traditional legacy view of how we define quality in data. Fit for data, on the other hand, is data that is fit for a specific purpose, typically an operational purpose. This is something that's really, really important. We need to keep in mind that data is used both analytically, but also operationally. And fit for purpose is data that makes a process run. Quote to cash runs, procure to pay runs. You're able to execute a contract in Salesforce or create a new lead or create a new account. Now, however, data that may be fit for that purpose may not necessarily be fit for the analytical purposes. And here's where a lot of data leaders really get hung up is we will say that something's not fit for an analytical purpose, and then we see it and we see a problem. There's a flag or a trigger or something is raised in our data quality tool, and we look at it, it's like, oh, that's bad. Shame, shame, shame on you, business leader, because this data is not accurate, is not high quality, when in reality, it could be completely fit for purpose from an operational perspective. So there's a tension there, and there's always been a tension there. And I think data leaders in an era of AI need to take more attention, pay more attention to both, right? Both aspects of data quality, fit for purpose and quality from a kind of a data standard perspective.
I would say so I'm not going to touch quality because I think Malcolm did a great job sort of describing quality. on fit for purpose, I would add on to what Malcolm was saying. Because when I even think about analytical outcomes, or I think about programs that might be predictive or prescriptive, I think that there's a fit for purpose of the data there, that we need to pick the right data to put into those models to get the outcome that we're looking for. And so just because you have, let's even think about it from a flat file perspective that has 1,000 different columns. It's like 20 of them are going to drive your outcome. 40 of them are going to drive your outcome. Are you using the right ones? And so fit for purpose adding on is in those situations where we're trying to be predictive and prescriptive. Are we picking the right variables?
That is so important. The idea of fit for purpose for AI. It kind of touches on something on a related topic related to AI readiness. Everybody's talking about AI ready and is your data AI ready? Well, my old employer Gartner would define AI ready data as data that most closely resembles the source for a given AI use case, which Andy just said, which is what outcomes do you want, right? That is kind of the frame here. And data that most closely aligns to the source that supports that use case is AI ready data. Now, what I was talking about was data that conforms to a standard, not the source, right? And these can often
Hmm.
be two very, very different things. Maybe they're the same, but they can be different things because if you're trying to model reality, which is often what we're trying to do in AI, or we're trying to model to a standard, right? Which is often what we're trying to do from a governance perspective. And another way to look at this is maybe for a given function or a given outcome, or for more of a cross-functional use. A lot of different perspectives here, and it's an interesting, challenging time we live in.
Well, so to continue on with that, so I often think about sort of data quality is that you understand the data from one perspective or one angle. And what you're talking about, Malcolm, in extending that into provenance, right? So what
Yeah.
is the source of that data? How close to the source are we? What is the purpose for using that data? And so provenance becomes so much more important. So it's always important, but as we're using these AI models where it's very difficult to track the source of the data going into the AI models, we need to have a marker on provenance. So combining that quality with provenance and fit gives us the best outcomes.
Right. And it's also a key indicator around context. And we can talk a lot about
Mm,
context. Context
perfect.
in the context of fit for purpose. If you know the provenance of data, if you know that this came from a sales application, you can pretty much guess that the context was sales and marketing, right? So provenance is important from a number of different perspectives, right? It'll help you kind of better tune your data quality expectations. It'll help you better understand if it's fit for purpose, if it's not fit for purpose, right? If you're going to use that data for a audit or compliance perspective and it's coming out of your CRM, red flag. I wouldn't say don't use it, but understanding the provenance is absolutely key. Couldn't agree more, Andy.
And so the context piece, we're just going to keep going. Oh,
Yeah, sorry,
Malcolm,
Kate. Yeah.
forget Kate. It's
Keep going.
sorry, Kate. But I mean, you bring up context, which people, I mean, that's one aspect that people don't really think about when they look at performance of a model. They look at the performance of a model and they say, "Oh, look how great my performance is." Well, you have to have context of the real world like problem you're trying to solve. So it could have great performance, but if it doesn't understand the context of the problem you're trying to solve, you are not going to get the best outcomes. So we'll tag that on to the end then. We got to say you got to have quality, you got to have provenance, you got to have fit, and you got to have the context that allows us to make sure that the models are meeting the expectations of what we have from a business perspective.
Yep. Could agree more.
That's great. Malcolm, follow-up question for you here. In thinking about trying to replicate or mimic reality with models and AI, as we move towards synthetic data to train models, does the concept of data fit become more or less critical?
I think it becomes more critical, but that's the easy answer here. When it comes to synthetic data, there's a lot that I still need to get my head around. But I do know that at the core of this is still a statistically significant, I struggle with that, statistically significant sample of the real data. You can't just synthesize data out of nothing, right? There still needs to be a corpus of data that you use for the baseline to build all your synthetic data from. So start with that. And if that is askew, if that's not representative of reality, or if that is low quality for the desired use case, I suspect that building processes on top of that that magnify it and replicate it millions, maybe billions of times, highly problematic, right? Because the way I look at it, and maybe this is, I've just been doing way too much DIY these days, but if you've ever laid floor tile, right, in a big room, and you're putting down your tile, and the first tile, and they're supposed to be a quarter inch or an eighth of an inch apart, and they're a little bit more, right? And at the beginning of that line of tile, it's not like a very big difference, right? You haven't drifted that much, but 10 feet later, at the end when you're laying the tile, all of a sudden that eighth of an inch gap is now three quarters of an inch, right? And if we're doing that with synthetic data, which I suspect we could be, it's problematic. Now, on the other end of that equation, I think what you'll hear people say is that, well, you can build models to measure the drift, right? And you've got agents and models and all these other AI-based processes to double check the work of AI-based processes, right? And at what point does that become like this ridiculous fractal where we can't necessarily understand why we're looking at what we're looking at? This gets back to providence. This gets back to explainability. This gets back to a lot of the kind of core deterministic rules that have been sitting underneath legacy data quality programs for a very, very, very long time. I don't think those things go away. I think they remain incredibly important, but can we explain why we're seeing what we're seeing? And if we just start throwing a whole bunch of synthetic data at everything, it's going to help with the PII and it's going to help with a lot of the kind of the data sensitivity and security issues that we've long wrestled with. But if we make it harder and harder to understand why a system is behaving the way it's behaving, that's problematic too.
Yeah,
That's great.
I think that's a great explanation. The only thing I would add on to that is, as we're, if we're putting these into model, it all depends on what you're using the synthetic data for, right? So, but
Yeah.
if you're using it in some type of let's say you're trying to understand customer behavior, or you're trying to understand a prospect's behavior, and we're using synthetic data about a large population of people who may behave the same way. I would say, as you look at what's driving the performance of those models, if it's some of the synthetic data that's the highest feature importance of that model, I think you got to do a deeper investigation. And that's where it really becomes important to understand sort of you're basically saying this is the data that fits into my model, and if fit matters and it's synthetic data, what kind of guardrails have you put on that synthetic data to make sure that it's representative of the full population? And so again, this fit, provenance, quality sort of combination is so critical.
Yeah, whatever errors were there to begin with will be magnified. That was kind of my key
Magnified.
point about the whole dumb
You've
tile
got it.
metaphor. But whether that's an error, whether it's a quality problem, whether that's a bias problem, they're all going to be magnified and harder to explain.
So how did you fix your problem with your floor?
I hired a professional.
All
Yeah.
right. We
Sorry.
should try.
In this case, the bad metaphor, because in this case, I am the professional. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, we could probably end the metaphor there.
I like the floor tile metaphor. That was great. The right answer is you just measured correctly the first time, right?
Okay, there you go. Yeah.
Um, question for both of you. When leaders say our data is high quality, what follow-up questions should they be asking to pressure test whether that data is actually fit for purpose?
Andy, you go first.
Yeah, so I'm going to probably say something that's a little bit off like what people probably aren't thinking about, is that I would look at the map and going from sort of the problem you're trying to solve to the outcome. So if you go from problem to, hey, what type of model do we want to use, to the data, to the model, to the deployment. And I would say that, do you have a human along that loop in almost every connection between those? Because the human is going to understand what is happening in that chain of events. And if you don't have a human in there, I get worried about whether or not that we're solving the right problem or we're using the right data. Have we picked the right data? Meaning, do we have the right fit of data for the problem that we're trying to solve? In the human with context or domain experience, or however you want to think about it, if they're sitting there asking the question, who's going to be disadvantaged by this model? Or do we have the right data that's representative of the whole population? I think that that goes a long way to giving comfort that we are at least that we're looking at the problem from a humanistic perspective. And I know everybody out there that says AI is going to take over everything. I just don't think so. I think you still need a human in the loop.
So to answer all valid points, although the human in the loop doesn't scale. So what, how do we scale the human in the loop? That's the question. I'm not disagreeing with you, Andy. I think that this kind of touches on the point I was talking about with explainability. We still need explainability. And I still think that we're a long ways away from a finance bot signing off on the financials of a company, right? As
Mhm.
long as humans are still legally accountable and legally responsible, there will be humans in the loop. I just see there being scale problems there. But to the core question of, how do you assess fitness? Well, first of all, you need to understand how the data is going to be used, right? I mean, and that talks to what Andy was talking about with outcomes. What is your desired outcome? How is the data going to be used? In the case of a business process, let's not forget data is used for analytics, but it's also used for business processes. This is something we're not doing much in the data world, which is assess the fitness of the data for the given supported business process or an AI model, right? Did procure to pay work? Did the sale get executed? Did the customer receive the goods? Is the customer satisfied? If those processes all work, right, and they work within defined SLAs of the organization, well, then the data is necessarily fit for purpose. One way to think about this on the analytics side is we built this whole notion of data observability, right? Started with just ETL and understanding when pipelines would break, and now it's going into other things, right? Will our reports break, right? Will there be some sort of downstream problem caused by data that is not fit for an analytical purpose? Where I see things going is data observability is great. It's wonderful, right? And we built some great tools there. Some companies are focusing on this, but business observability, I would argue, is equally as important, right? Are our core business processes running? And if they are, and if they're running within expected SLAs, expected performance metrics, well, then it's fit for that purpose as well. But we need to keep in mind that these two dimensions of fitness could be slightly different. Same thing is true with AI, right? What's the desired outcome? What are you trying to do? The great example here is LLMs, right? The desired outcome was to mimic human language and mimic human creativity, right? The data that it used to do that was a cesspool, the internet, right? From a data quality perspective, it's horrible, right? Like
Mhm.
the internet is not known as a bastion of high data quality, but it was good enough to create these models that are actually really, really, really good at mimicking human creativity and language.
Yep, that's great. That's awesome. Um, Following up on that, what signals should executives be looking for to indicate that any AI initiatives are failing because of fit, not necessarily model performance or tooling?
Oh gosh, I'll take that one first, Andy, then you can jump onto it. What are the indicators that a model is failing or that the data is not fit for the purpose? Well, hopefully you would figure that out before you went to production. And I think that most are figuring it out before you go to production. That's exactly why you see these ridiculous 95% failure rates of POCs. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole necessarily, but I think there's a lot of different factors that are causing AI-based initiatives to fail, not necessarily the model fail per se, especially given the fact that 90% of AI deployments are generally out of the box deployments. They're using shrink wrap models as straight as they come from the foundational providers, right? The OpenAIs and the Anthropics. 90% of what we're doing these days is using shrink wrap models. 10% of companies are doing some sort of customized Gen AI deployments or customized kind of data science legacy type stuff that we've always done around natural language processing or machine learning and those types of things. So what I'm seeing and the headlines that are being grabbed are all around these failed POCs. Is it the model failing? I'm not entirely sure it's the model failing. I think it's the operating model failing more than likely, right? It's our operating model around governance. It's our operating model around quality. It's the way that we approach data management. It's cost management in these spaces. I had a very interesting conversation with the CDO of a extremely well-known consumer-facing insurance company where they were focused on an AI initiative to take all of their paper, like legacy insurance claims documents that were sitting in paper and actually digitize them. And I'm like, oh, well, that's a perfect use case for an LLM, right? I assume you just kind of threw all that stuff at an LLM and had them parse out all of the key data from it. And the answer was, we tried that. It ended up costing us way more than it would have ever have cost us if we were just using good old optical character recognition technology that's been around for 30 years. Great example of an AI POC failing, right? Because it was the wrong use case, the wrong data for that specific use case. Not necessarily the model following, but the wrong combination of all of the above. And I think that's what a lot of companies are finding is that the processes that they're trying to automate are just not a great fit for AI. Maybe the model, maybe the data, maybe a broken business process, maybe a legacy approach to governance, on and on and on. But hard to pinpoint. It's just, okay, well, your model is failing. I don't know. That's kind of I avoided the question a little bit, but that's what I'm seeing in the market.
I'm thinking, I'm listening to you, and I'm like, look, I'm thinking about the question.
Yeah,
It's a really hard question
it is.
because I'm not so sure that there are signals for specifically fit. I mean, there's so many things that you said that I could riff off of, but there's two things. One is I do think that if we're not like your thoughts about, hey, if you're getting what you want, you're hitting your SLA, you're getting what you want at the end of the process, you probably have data that's fit for purpose. So I would start there and say, are we getting what we want? And if you're not, okay, then let's go back to the old concepts of root cause analysis. Let's go back to sort of Six Sigma and use those techniques in that data pipeline from the beginning of the understanding the problem to the deployment. And what I think you end up with is, especially in AI models, you're looking at three things. So do you have a problem with the model? Do you have a problem with the data? Or do you have a problem with the human?
Yeah.
Right? And it's probably a combination of all three, but that root cause analysis will get us back to let's make sure that we understand each of those three pillars. And when you come to the data piece then does break down into quality, provenance, and fit. So, but I don't know what the signal, other than you're not getting what you want out of the process, out of the business process that's being driven by the AI or the analytic model. That's your signal. Then you got to go back to, tried and true measures of things like root cause analysis.
Well, you just touched on something that's really important. And I agree with everything you just said. So the data, the model, the person, you could even argue it was the creator of the data in the first place. But let's put that aside. A great example here is the Air Canada use case that kind of hit the news a couple of years ago, where an Air Canada chatbot gave some false information about the bereavement policy of the airline, or whether or not somebody would
Mm,
get like a drastically reduced rate on an airplane ticket because they had to fly to go to a funeral. We don't know whether it was the model or the data, but it could have been either, right? Was it bad data that the model was ingesting, or did the model just completely make something up and hallucinate, and that's the problem?
yes,
This
yes.
this all this and it was somebody who was trying to specifically hack out an answer. They wanted the bot. This came out in a court case because it went to all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada, and it came out that the person was actually trying to through very very crafty prompts was trying to manipulate the LLM to give it the answer that it wanted, which was free airfare. So you put all these things together. How in the world are we, as data quality professionals, as data management professionals, and data governors, ever going to model all this stuff in a pre-production environment? How will we know in a pre-production environment? I'm not entirely sure we will, right?
Mm,
If it is all the combination of those three in a highly probabilistic system where the outputs can be dynamic based on a whole bunch of different contextual variables, how do we like this is a brave new world because in the past when we
mm,
had these deterministic systems, deterministic rules, right? Rows and columns, we knew what we expected. We had our standards defined, which are those governance policies and data quality dimensions. We define those. We can measure the quality largely in a vacuum,
mm.
right? We can go and assess quality as the data sits in a warehouse, even independently of how it's used. Now the data has to be used for us to figure out whether or not it was fit or not. Like that's a whole different world for me. And I can't quite get my head around all of that about how to assess after the fact. But it's almost getting back to the insurance metaphor. It almost seems to me like it's how we manage insurance, like and how we underwrite insurance. We kind of expect things to go wrong, and then we model that risk, and then we account for it somehow, some way, which is a very different way of managing data and data quality as
Yeah.
how we did it in the past.
Yeah, I think what's challenging, and I know, Kate, we're running close on time, but I think what's challenging is so many people think, like when they hear AI, they think software. Oh, this is
Yeah.
a software program, that deterministic. And it's not. I mean, these
Mm,
models will learn over time. They will make things, if they can't find the answer, they're probabilistic. Like you said, they will make up an answer. And that's a tough environment to manage. And sorry, Kate, I know we're
yep,
running
for
over.
sure.
No worries. This is great. I have two more questions I want to get through with both of you in the last couple minutes here. The first one, if an organization could only change one thing about its data strategy to improve AI outcomes, what should it be? I'll pass that off to Malcolm first and then Andy.
Well, it would be value driven, right? Literally be value. And Andy's been using the word outcome. I think value and outcome's probably a better word because we get really wrapped around the axle on how to define value. What does value mean? And I don't want to fall down that rabbit hole. I could talk for hours about how to quantify value. And if you've ever talked to any CFO, they will tell you how you can do it. And I would tell you how you can do it. The idea you can't is to me is kind of laughable because we're the measurement people and we should be, if people turn to us for how to measure things, regardless. Put everything through the lens of a defined business outcome that has an expected ROI, and you measure your performance against that ROI. Have an outcome you're aiming for. Don't do AI for AI's sake. Don't do data quality for data quality's sake. I used to see this all the time when I was an analyst. I'd ask people why they were doing data quality. Why are you investing in this software, in this tool, in this process? Well, it's because we need better data. Okay, really? That's not a business outcome. Better data is not a business outcome as much as I wish it was, right? It's a data outcome. Focus on outcomes, focus on value, have that be the North Star and work backwards from there.
Yeah, I would say thank you, Malcolm. I would say I would like organizations to start thinking about external data differently than internal data
Mm,
because it comes with a whole different set of opportunity, costs, risks, and it can be the additive that turns crude oil into jet fuel. If you use it right, I mean, just two quick examples. JP Morgan Chase used to write external data around like geographic location and economic data that reduced fraud by $100 million in 1 year. That's a real outcome to Malcolm's point. Adobe used the right external data combined with the right internal data to increase subscription rates, so to drive revenue by 25%. This idea that just because it's in our organization and it is data and not thinking about the source and how we use it, I think we leave a lot on the table and a lot of opportunity, but increased risk because we're not managing it the right way.
well, it's interesting. The higher professional thing, we've come full circle here because when it comes to external data, sometimes if you find the right partners and the right source, you can address a lot of the things that we've been talking about, right? Provenance, explainability, quality. I mean, a lot of these things you can turn
Fit.
to an expert to literally buy, right? And that's often what a lot of these providers bring to the table, which is a brand recognition, which is built-in governance, which is built-in provenance, all of those things, instead of having you do it from scratch.
Yep, that's great. I'm going to squeeze in one more question here. So give me your most succinct answers possible. If we look ahead 2 years, will data quality be a solved problem thanks to AI, leaving data fit as the only real competitive advantage left?
Oh, geez.
Go ahead,
Um,
Andy.
all right, I'll start with this. And what I would say is data quality as an issue has been around since I started in this business 30 years ago. And yeah, I think that there's going to be improvements, but I think it's not just going to be AI that fixes our problem. I think the concept of fit actually helps us fix that problem. I could go deeply into that, but I'm not. I'm going to say, Malcolm, you get the last minute.
Yeah, I see there being a little bit of a paradox. The short answer is no, of course. We won't fix all the data quality problems, but I do think that the technologies here will advance to the point where we are able to be so context driven, right? And so fit for purpose, right? In terms of the solutions we build, because we'll be able to scale everything we've done, unlike however we've ever done in the past. Will be able to scale governance. We'll be able to scale our analytics. We'll be able to scale and have very, very bespoke solutions where some of the underlying data quality issues are, to a certain degree, obfuscated by the degree of specificity that we can bring to the table through all of this scale that I was talking about. Data quality problems won't be solved, but we will obfuscate a lot of those through highly bespoke solutions in the data analytics space.
Boom.
Ta-da! There, I was
Awesome.
succinct.
Thank you both. It's always a great conversation with both of you. Malcolm, thank you so much for joining. Andy, thank you for your time. Um, Follow-ups to this for everyone that's attending today. You'll be getting the recording of this session, along with you've got tons of other conversations and questions we can answer on this topic and many more. So any other sessions coming up, you'll know about those as well. Malcolm has a great book on Amazon, The Data Hero Playbook. We at Blue Street Data love that book. So go check that out on Amazon. Yep, there it is. And thank you everyone for joining. Thanks again, Malcolm and Andy, and
Thanks,
have a great
Malcolm.
day.
See you in
Thanks all.
Orlando, Malcolm. See
Yeah,
you.
look forward to
Bye,
it.
everyone.
Bye for now.